Hey, welcome back to the Community Leader Podcast. This is episode 16. I'm your host, Todd Welsh, and today I'm with my great friend, Kent Buer, president of First Bank Kansas here in Salina, Kansas. We talked to him a little bit about what's it look like growing up as a farm boy, how he got into the banking business, and then what really brought him to Salina, Kansas. We're going to dive deep in what it looks like to be a community service leader, to donate your time for civic organizations. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the River Project and what that looks like for Salina. So help joining me, a little quick interview with my good friend, Kent Buer. All right, Kent, thank you for being here today. It's Kent with Buer with First Bank Kansas, and we go back a long way.
Morning, Todd. We do go back a long ways.
Yeah, some good friendship there. We're going to talk a little bit about some business you and I did, too, that's going to surprise you. I'm sure you'll remember, but couple things we'll talk about then, so I'll hold that till the very end.
Okay.
So, hey, well, before we get started with that, let's talk about the Mocha's Minute for a second. And I called you yesterday and said, hey, what do you want from Mocha's? And you got
I got the black coffee with a little bit of cream.
With a little bit of cream,
yep.
Okay? Cold.
Yes.
And I love what you keep saying, which is what? What's your trademark so far?
Let that ice melt.
Let that ice melt.
It's going to get better and better.
Because for those of you who watched the show, I wasn't a coffee drinker. I don't know that I am a coffee drinker. I kept drinking hot chocolate, but I thought, you know what, I'm going to go out on a limb. And thank you to Mocha's. And I had to write it down as I was going through the drive-thru, so I knew what it was. Coma, is that right? Coma Riella? I think that's what she called it.
Sounds
I'm not sure.
pretty fancy.
It does. It's like, and then she wanted to know if I wanted some other stuff with it, and I said, "Man, just give it to me straight." So Coma Riella, I think, is what I'm going to drink today. It's a little iced coffee
There you
with
go.
caramel, I think, and it's not bad. I could see that being a refreshing.
Mocha's is my go-to.
Mocha's your go-to.
Yes.
Cool.
JRI does an awesome
Yeah.
job.
Well, thank you to JRI and Mocha's. We're going to sit here. I'm going to set this aside. I'm going to let the ice melt a
There
little
you
bit.
go.
And we'll pick that back up later on. So anyway, Kent, tell me in 60 seconds or less about you and your family and what your family looks like right now.
Sure. I grew up in north central Kansas, Republic County, I grew up on a dairy farm in Norway, Kansas. Had a couple older brothers and younger sister. But my family now, my wife, Marcy, 37 years this next month. And
Wow.
I got a son, Caden, that's going to be 33 years old soon. Lives in Kodiak, Alaska with his family. And then my daughter, Carly, is, 31 years old, and she lives in the Denver area, Lakewood.
Okay.
So going to go see her this weekend, so excited about that, and her family.
And we were just talking, you just got back 10 days ago from Alaska.
We did.
And you had a little grandbaby.
Carly and her family were able to meet us up at the same time when everybody got tickets, and we planned this trip. We didn't know my daughter-in-law wasn't pregnant at the time. My daughter wasn't pregnant at the time, so a ton of blessings in our family. We had a little grandbaby, Bridger, so that's number 2. And then Caden and Paige also have a couple kids that are family that they have guardianship of. They're originally from Concordia, that they love and take care of, and I see them as grandkids. So
Yeah.
they're busy.
You are blessed.
Yeah.
That's great. Great to see that. Okay, so let's get to know Kent a little better because you and I know each other.
Uh-huh.
We've gone back a long way.
Yeah.
Before I get into that business side of it, take me back to Kent at 16 years old. Where did you grow up?
Right between Concordia and in Belleville, and then on a farm. Wouldn't trade it. On a dairy farm back in the day, I mean, we were still old school. I mean, the small square barrels where you threw them by hand and got us in shape for football.
You're a farm kid.
Part. I'm a farm kid.
Okay.
Didn't have a history of family going to college. Didn't know what I was going to do. Track coach called from Cloud County Community College. Went to Cloud County, met the love of my life. That was the best day of my life when I met Marcy.
Wow.
She was running track up there also.
What was your sport in track?
I was I'm showing my age. I was a half miler. It wasn't 800 meters. It was half mile.
Half a mile.
Yeah.
Okay.
And most half milers were 6'1", 160, and here I was 5'8", 5'9". So yeah, it was a struggle.
Nice. Nice.
But anyway, relating back when I was a kid, 14, 15, go back a little bit, it was a big deal to come to Salina because for Christmas shopping and for those Heart of America basketball camps.
Yeah.
I mean, I came to those in 75, 76, Ken Cochran, Coach Bob, and man, those guys were tough. Up on the old Marymount courts.
Right.
Then we get around the swimming pool. You know, it was 110 degrees back then. And that was a big trip for somebody. And then coming down here as a kid, I'd be with my mom when I was real little. I remember going to Stiefels on all the different floors of Stiefels. And I also remember a big thing was to go to Weeks Grocery, which is where Tammy Walker Cancer Center is. And they had a tagline. I seen it recently. Because they were kind of like a Gibson's, but they had groceries. And so I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but First Bank Kansas, First State Bank and Trust back then, actually had a branch bank in that Weeks, which was the first one in the state of Kansas to be in a grocery type store. So I'm jumping all over. So
No, I love it.
I'll let you pull me back in.
No, I love it, and I let you go just because, and the longer I'm in Salina, so I've been here for 30 plus years, 33 years. And I love to hear these old locations where things were. And what I really love is trying to remember what people remember when they were kids on where they went. Like I don't know why that's important to me, because the older I get, like I can think of the places that I remember going to when I was a child, not in Salina because I didn't come here, but in the places that I was from and what Denver, where Denver went to me. So, you mentioned Casa Bonita in Denver.
Oh, yeah.
And that was like that was a treat for me when my mom and dad would take me to Casa Bonita. So I'm always trying to think of what kids think of who either grew up in Salina or around there and what they really remember.
Elmore Center. I think they had their own dairy. It was out there across from Central High School.
Central, yeah.
Yeah. And it was a cafeteria style, but they had great ice cream. They had a gift store. And that was, my mom always would stop there. I mean, this is like once or twice a year we'd come down a 2-lane highway, trying to pass semis on a 2-lane highway when it's heavy truck traffic.
Yeah.
People don't realize what a thrill that is. And we weren't wearing seatbelts back then.
Were you out the door doing
awesome.
this, get them to honk the horn?
Oh, yeah. And back then,
that.
People threw their trash out the windows. And I really remember.
No seatbelts on. You're probably
no
up in the top window floorboard.
I was the youngest of the boys, so we go on a trip. I'd get the back window. My biggest brother would get the seat, and then the middle brother would get the floorboards.
That sounds so much like us. My brother would be up in the top window riding.
Oh, yeah.
And I would be in the floorboard, and nobody would be in the seat because that was just too, like anybody could sit in the seat.
We were safe because when Mom would hit the brakes, she'd always put her hand over your shoulder.
Of course.
So you were safe.
Man, we're showing our age. We got to get back there. Okay, so let's say Cloud County Community College, you graduate from there. Did you leave right from there to Salina?
Went right from there to K-State to work on my 4-year, still trying to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up. Went into accounting, hated it. So I have a lot of respect for Carol Long and some others.
Yeah.
Got into finance. You think, well, finance, kind of same thing. It was not the same thing. I really enjoyed the finance. I got into money and banking. Marcy was down there. She was a different level athlete than me. She was actually running track at K-State. And then she got into the dental hygiene program at Wichita State, went that direction, finished up at Wichita State. I finished up at K-State. Back in the mid-'80s, we were going through the end of the ag crisis, really not even the end of the ag crisis. From the 70s, high inflation, 18% interest rates. And, farmers were losing their farms. A lot of families were struggling. My family was struggling. And so I remember getting out of K-State with a $500 car, and that I was just hoping would get me to the next place, and $13,500 in student loans, and that's what I started with. The state banking department was hiring because there were so many banks that were in trouble. We had 640 banks in the state of Kansas at that time. Now we have like 210. So you can see how banking's changed since then. Yeah. So interviewed at the state banking department, FDIC, could have went to St. Louis, Farm Credit Service. Ended up taking the state banking department job. Came to Salina. They had an office here. And so I moved to Salina. And it's like, that's familiar. I'm close to home. I can still go home on weekends and help out. Marcy was working at Topeka at that time. Then we got married in '86, so she came this direction. I remember living over here on 10th Street. Our first house was 300 Reed. Bought a house in, it would have been what was it? Probably 88.
Okay.
I came back to work, and I was bragging, teasing people. You tell me I got an interest rate on my home loan single digits, 9.875.
Yeah, my first one was 14. Yeah.
Oh, so
I was 14. Yeah, I was 14%.
Yeah, you're about 10 years behind me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So we lived in Salina for 6 years. I learned a lot because I could go to all the banks in the region. I could see the culture. I could see how they treated the community. I had a lot more respect for the banks that were loaning money versus the banks that were just hanging on to their money. I could see the different communities that were thriving in the small towns, and a lot of times it revolved around what that bank and that bank culture was doing. That made a big impression on me. So I knew I wanted to get on that side of the desk eventually, and ended up going north, and ended up in Concordia, Kansas. Marcy was thrilled because she said that was the 2 funnest years of my life at that time.
Right.
When we were at Cloud County Community College. Knew a lot of people up there, and I was a banker up there for 10 years. Because I'd been a bank examiner, Lloyd Davidson called, and they were needing a senior loan officer at that time, and I had some pretty good experience by then. Came down and sat with him and Angie Irick, Kurt Glazier, and Steve Michael. And so I got to give it to the older crew. She's younger than me, so is Kurt. They're still here today, and they're part of the leadership team. Angie's been with the bank 40-plus years. Kurt's been with the bank over 30 years, and I'm with the bank 24 years this month.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Well, I don't know how we met. I remember meeting you, not specifically that day, but, I knew Lloyd and had a little bit of relationship there. And then, that's when I said I'm going to tell a story on you, which is that I will come out and say that I think that part of my success, a lot of my success, was from you. And I want you to know that from that. And all of the stuff, from the financial backing success.
I would say me and my team.
Okay, you and your team.
I don't do this alone.
Okay, but you really didn't have I guess I would say team. But let's go all the way back. When I bought the school that we're in right now, okay. So for those of you who are watching, we're at 300 South 9th, which used to be the old Bartlett Elementary School. And when I was doing my real estate career, I had left the previous place I was at. I was in another office, and USD 305 was getting rid of 3 schools. And so you had to put in your bid and what you would do with it. And they didn't really care how much they got for it. It was more of what you were going to do with it in the community.
Which I appreciated the USD's thought process.
Yes, I did too. And so the one I really put in for was, I think it's Franklin, which is on the other side of Crawford Street, but I didn't get that one. And they came back and said, we had nobody bid on the Bartlett School. Would you be interested in it? And I remember walking into the bank, because I got to be honest with you, First Bank was not my bank at that time, okay? I was banking elsewhere. And when I went to that bank, the bank said, well, because honestly, I only paid $10,000 for the school, okay? And people go, oh, you stole it. And I went, you know what? Knowing what I know now, if I would have paid 11, I would have not have offered that. Because $500,000 or $700,000 later, when you're trying to take care of these buildings, it gets expensive. But I remember walking into you, and it was Lloyd, and Lloyd introduced me to you. And I think we had met through, I don't know whether it was through Ambucks or something like that, but I kind of knew who you were. And we sat down, and I showed you this vision. I said, hey, I'm going to need about $300,000, $400,000. And my other lending institution where I was at just said, Todd, I don't think that's a good deal. You don't have enough collateral. You don't have enough money. You don't have enough, and we're just not going to loan you that money. And the truth of it was, what they said was, if you get half of it rented up, then we'll loan you the money. Oh, well, this thing looked like what it looked like.
Yeah,
it was terrible.
Tough.
It was in disarray and all that stuff. But I remember you believing in me and loaning me, which ended up to be about $500,000, because we started out asking for 3.
Everybody's short when it comes to these old buildings.
You should have told me that up front, too.
I think I did.
Yeah, maybe you did. So I came in and I asked for $300,000. And, I don't even know how old I would have been then. Let's just say it's 30. I was 30 years old, 30, 40, 50, maybe 30 years old, asking for $500,000, which in today's numbers, like me going and asking for maybe 1.5.
It was a lot.
It was a lot. And your team, First Bank Kansas, and I'm sure you had to go to loan committee meeting and battle for me, and people had questions, and the executive team wanted to know why are we going to loan this 30-year-old kid a $500,000 to go fix up a school. And so I appreciate that, and I want to bring, like, I don't even know, good or bad, where I would be based off that, but this has been a phenomenal building for us. It was good for the community.
Very good for the community.
And we've been able to put it back into the tax roll and make it work. And we've got several tenants in here, and it works out great. But I wanted people to know that, and I wanted you to know thank you for doing that. And people just need to realize of, like, how do the Todd Welshes of the world get started? And it goes all the way back to somebody like you taking a chance. And you guys being a community bank and you looking at it and saying, okay, this may or may not make 100%, but you invested in the community. And it's exactly what you said when you'd go around and visit those banks. You would see the ones who were investing in the community.
It's about the people. It's not always about the numbers. I mean, the numbers matter, but when you're looking at projections, it's about the people. And I'm not going to blow smoke. You just have a way about you, and it's obvious. Just doing these podcasts, I mean, this is a really cool thing. I've watched most of them, and I just smile as you're putting the thread in the community together and telling the stories. But, Salina is fortunate from a financial standpoint. We've got 11 banks in this town, a few credit unions, but we've got 11 banks, and most of them are very strong community banks. The community banks can, in my opinion, that's how we compete. We move quicker. we take some flyers on people we believe in, and so
Well, the funny story, the ending to that story is, after we got it all done, after we took your $500,000, the same lending institution who turned me down came back in and wanted a meeting with me, and they said, "Hey, we'd like to refinance that and do the loan on the building."
That happens.
And frequently. I said, "I bet you would."
Yeah.
And I bet you would.
I have to be honest. We're not always right, and sometimes we're the ones going, "Oh man, we should have done that."
Yeah.
So,
but I'm pretty loyal now. That, I mean, again, I think back of everything that was there, and so I appreciate you. Appreciate First Bank Kansas. Not that the other lending institutions don't do a great job here in town. It's just a great story for me. And what I'm trying to get across is, for any young person who watches it, is there are a couple of people who created the success for me on the back end. Sure, I worked my tail off.
Yes, you did.
But I was very well supported by two people, and you mentioned one earlier. So I would say First Bank Kansas and Long and Associates. Okay, so having a great financial institution backing you, knowing that at any time I couldn't get myself in too much trouble, that I could go in and say, "Hey, I need $100,000 or I need $50,000." That was a big deal to me, to be able to go out and take a little bit more risks. And you know as well as I do, with buying some flip homes I did throughout the time, and make 10 or 20 off that, and then reinvest that 20, and then to grow a nice little portfolio that, again, was created by you guys giving that example. And then with Carol, I would tell the other person, saying, if you're ever going to start a company and go forward, is get a great accountant.
You need a team.
Yeah.
You need a team, and you need that up front. You need a good financial advisor, the banker, accountant, and don't forget the attorney. I always tell people.
I didn't want to say that, but yeah.
No, I'm talking in a good way. The attorney fees are cheaper on the front end than they are on the back end.
Are.
I can assure you.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, so we have a good legal team that's there, but now we're finding out the larger you get, the more exposure you have, and so we're having to go visit attorneys about other things that that we don't want to go visit them about. But it's just, that's called growth, and so we have a great team. We have a great team, and your team back at the branch is a part of that. And so I just wanted to say, I want to give kudos to First Bank and
appreciate that.
Let you know how big of a role you've played in my career. So,
you're not done yet. I'm excited to see what's going on downtown. You have in Salina, not just downtown. And you have a big role to play in that, as do several others.
Yeah, I love downtown because in 1989, 90, 91, I was on the SDI board down there, and we were mentioning some names. Paul, I would go sit at a meeting, and I would have Liz Carroll, Chuck Carroll, Harold Cooley's, the Paul Wardens of the world, Andy Anderson, Scott Sewell, who is up in Topeka now. I'm not sure what he does. He came down for some groundbreaking thing, but he used to be the SDI coordinator at the time. And we went through about 4 or 5 of them, trying to resurrect and really just keep Salina alive. I was down there on the board. Do you remember when the Great Race came through?
Oh,
When
yeah.
all the old
Yeah.
cars came
Yeah.
through, and so I was on the board and helped orchestrate that. So that takes you how far back when Klein's was there, and we were working with
I
Klein's.
followed up right behind you. When I first got to town in '91, I was on the SDI board for 6 years. That was the first community service type thing I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was different,
Yeah.
and now you can, everybody, I don't say everybody wants to be on the board, but it's sexy to be on the board now because you have a lot going on.
And it was we had some challenges.
It was very
But you
challenging.
learned a lot from the Andy Andersons and the Chuck Carrolls and several others.
Yep. Yep. So you're on the SDI board. Tell me, get ready, if you're listening, get ready for a laundry list of this guy is a phenomenal volunteer in our community. Name me off the ones that you can even remember that you've served on the boards.
Well, but
You can toot your horn, because if not, I'm going to toot it for you, but go ahead.
I want to share that we talk about our team all the time. Don't get involved in 10 things at once. Faith, family, work. You can burn yourself out, and I tried to do too much at one time in my life, and it caused problems in my family on me. So getting something that you're passionate about, that's what I tell my team. So SDI was important to me. I was at Ambucks for 21 years. Love those guys. I served on the Salina Regional Health Center for 12 years. It's almost too long, but it was an amazing experience, and there was a lot of things happening in healthcare. Still is. That's a huge commitment, but I learned as much as I gave. Worked with a lot of amazing people. I'm involved with the Salina Regional Health Foundation at this point. Salina Airport Authority was amazing. Six years, just finished up with that about a year ago. Tim Rogers and Shelley and that crew, they've got it going on out there. You had Tim on, had fun listening to that. You need to have him on 2 more times.
Right.
But what was interesting to me, and you and Tim talked about it, and people asked him, what's Salina doing different? What they doing different? I can take you back to 2014 when they first started talking about we need to do something downtown, and we were sad. It was downtown was boring. It was tough. The buildings were blah. You didn't see ladders and going up and brick being laid. When I first came to First Bank, Kansas, where the hotel is now, where our ATM is, just to the north side of our downtown location at 235 South Santa Fe, there was a burnout shell, an old music piano and organ building burnt down.
Yeah.
And there was a
Huff. Was that a Huff piano? Yeah.
But there was it was tied up with the insurance adjusters, and it sat there for a few years. And I just can't imagine having that now, where you'd have a burnout shell sitting in the middle of your downtown, and the community would let that go on for 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah.
Lloyd Davidson finally got that bought, cleaned it up, cleared it out, and then we just sat and waited. What can we do with it? And then we was able to buy the building to the north, which Don Vansel had. Don did a lot of work for our bank back in the day. And he was renting that out to DCI, to Hutchinson. When DCI moved out, we bought that from Don. And that's where Advantage Trust Company is today. And we're just going through a complete remodel of that building. The inside's done. They're punching a few more windows in today in the alley. And then I'm probably getting ahead of you a little bit.
You're doing good. But I want to give them an idea of where we're talking about now, though, because and then I'll let you finish the story. So let's think of the hotel now. Then your parking lot. So as you're coming north on Santa Fe, you have your parking lot, your ATM.
Yeah.
Then you have First Bank Kansas as it sits today.
Yeah, we call that our main bank.
Okay, so there's your main bank.
We started there in 1961.
Okay, then you have the drive-throughs. Then the next building is the one you bought from Don Vansel, and that is now Advantage Trust.
That is Advantage Trust Company, and Advantage Trust Company is a wholly owned subsidiary. It's not a department; it is a company. Mark and Julie Miller started that, 25, 30 years ago. That's an amazing story. Brian Boyer and Julie Beswick are the top. They're the leadership with the help from a lot of other people. And so in that building, they got 14 team members. We probably have 20 at the main bank now. And so the next building, as you continue on, To the north is where the old Salina Regional Health Center Finance and Accounting building was.
And before that, it was insurers and investors. Okay.
Yeah. And then when
For a long
Salina
time.
Regional bought the old Journal building, they moved their finance and accounting building there. And we've been looking for years because our operations center, we needed help. Our basement was full at our main bank. People didn't know that. I mean, we had 25 people working down there. It's pretty tight condition. So they're thrilled. They got a new location. We put a lot of money into it. And actually there was two buildings there. If you look at the old, 1910, look at the plats, they called them row buildings. They were really long and narrow, and there was 5 of them. And the two on the north side had really higher ceilings. And so I tried to visualize back in the day going in and buying some tack and saddle or whatever and going down a really long, narrow, it's just kind of cool.
Yeah.
And we kind of left that a little bit industrial looking. So when we do have an open house there, they're finishing up the brickwork and the rock and the windows on the outside as we speak. It's a really cool place, and the people are having a lot of fun over there.
And who's going to go in there? Are you moving people from the basement there, or your executive team, or who's going in the new building?
No, that's going to be operations will be call center. Our finance department will be over there. Our operations department, tech department, compliance. So they'll be right at 30 people.
So what I think is cool about it is, and I may be talking out of turn because I think one time you and I talked, you were going to go vertical.
We talked about it.
But you couldn't. But the building didn't make it.
We have so many plans, and then the economy starts maybe going the wrong way a bit, so you slow down, and then you plan, you get your estimates in, you go, that's not going to work.
Right.
So we've been grinding for a long time. We've looked at buildings, around the downtown area, but if you think of the synergy of being able to just walk next door and have a meeting, so much more efficient than getting in a car and driving away from your headquarters or to your headquarters.
So we see First Bank Kansas as their main office there. We see them in downtown making a huge investment. So that's you're here for a while.
We're here for a while. We're here for a long time.
Yeah.
So we're putting a lot of money into downtown. We're thrilled with the talent that we have, and that's a battle. It's as everybody knows.
Yeah.
Because of what's happening ever since COVID, and it's just a different world we're living in now.
Yeah. Let's talk about financing and the difference that you see in there. Like, so me from a real estate agent standpoint, or anybody who's watching this, what does your bank look for? Or what are you seeing as an outlook in 10 years? Does the bank, our lending institutions, we don't have to talk about First Bank in general, but
Sure.
In lending institutions, is there a pullback right now if we don't want to lend because we're unsure of what to set the rate at? Are banks sitting on a pile of cash and they just don't know what to do with it? Well, tell me, this is for people who are watching this 10 years from now. So we're in the middle of 2023. And what I see is it's conflicting for me. It's like we came out of the best real estate in the last 20 years. Interest rates at 3%. Houses selling for $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. People just fighting for houses. Banks wanting to loan money, excited to loan money, and we loved it. 2019, 2020, 2021, and 2022. Now 23, we have these people, you can go on the internet and people will be projecting the biggest housing recession and doom and gloom is coming in 2024. Then I have other people saying, hey, the inventory is so short, housing prices aren't going to be the same. Let's set housing aside for a second. Let's just talk about banking in general as far as, because if we don't have the economics going on behind it, where people are hiring, you're lending money out, you see a lot of excitement of business owners, you see new businesses starting, that's who pays the salaries for the people to buy the homes. So let's talk about what Kent thinks or what you're seeing, because you're really kind of in touch with the economics part of it. What are you feeling right now?
That might be a different podcast, because you're going to have to shut me up once I get started.
I didn't say in 30 seconds, okay? So this may take us out so we're into this for 29 minutes. So a good 10-minute conversation.
You can't have an action without a reaction. So back in 2000, it started way before then. You can go back to what happened in the 70s and the crisis back then, and government's going to fix it, government's going to fix it, government's going to fix it. So they pour more money into it. Let me tell you, government's not going to fix it. Private industry needs to fix it. We need enough government to do what they need to do, but the government can't fix things. and that's a problem we have in our country today. So in 2009, 2010, some people call it the Great Recession. Remember how things were hopping. And then all of a sudden, we were building in Salina. Remember how many subcontractors we have? Yeah. And a lot of them, either went broke or about went broke and left town, went to bigger cities, got
we built
jobs.
We pulled 142 or 147 building permits at the height per year is what we pulled at that time. And now we barely pull maybe 60.
But the federal government, through Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, were saying everybody deserves to own a home. I don't deserve anything.
Yeah.
I want to earn it. And when they get that mentality, they were approving 97% loan to values. They were approving, 105% loan to value with basically no background check, no credit score check, and it was crazy. And we could see it happen, and we knew it wasn't going to end well.
Yeah.
We could see it. We talked about it all the time. So when it did tumble, it took a long time to dig out of that, and that's one way Salina got behind in the number of houses we need. And then they pushed the rates down artificially low for years instead of just letting interest rates go where they may. And so Tom Runyon, the old senior loan officer, used to talk about artificial interest rates. That's not good long term. It was like throwing a match on the fire, and you've seen what happened, and it was the go-go days, and everybody wanted to borrow money. Everybody wanted to borrow long-term fixed, and they should.
Yeah.
So we come to today when it's time to pay the piper, when eventually we have an inverted yield curve where the short-term rates are now 8.5, 9. The long-term rates on the treasuries are lower than that. They're at the 5s, depending on how far. And when you have an inverted yield curve, it can't stay that way forever. We either need to get it corrected quickly, or there's probably going to be a recession. Now, everybody has been predicting a recession. Is it going to be a hard landing? Is it going to be a soft landing? My answer is that depends. It depends on if the federal government can stop spending money to let the private industry work through the cash that's in the system. As far as to your question on, do banks want to lend? Banks want to lend. We want to lend to good customers. We want to lend to good people. But you really got to sharpen the pencil now, because there's a whole big difference in cash flowing 9% versus 5%
right.
on a business loan or the home loans. It's.
Now I'm with you on that, because I'm seeing that myself. It's like I want to create more opportunity, but it's tough for me to find something. Like I could say back before where $1 million would scare me to death. $1 million, that number doesn't scare me right now, but the payment and the interest on $1 million today scares me based on what it will cash flow. So in Salina, what I'm seeing, and some of my real estate colleagues may say, well, Todd, you shouldn't say that. That sounds negative. I'm not being negative.
It's reality.
It's a reality, okay?
I'm a realist.
Realist, which is the value still seems to be, people still think I can get X for these buildings or houses. But let's say if it's a rental type deal. So I'm looking at the investor right now who wants to invest in commercial, is the values are still high because it takes a lot of money. Like, people invested a lot of money in these buildings. And then so they've got X in them and they want to get X back out plus profit. Well, an investor who I've even maybe shown properties to, they go, okay, he wants $600,000 for it, but it's only bringing in $4,200 in rent. And there's one thing we know is taxes are not going to go down.
Right.
Utilities are going up. Insurance is on the rise. And so I think it's interesting of how some of this commercial property that we've lifted up when times were good at 3%, I shouldn't say 3%, but even at that 4.5%, 5% loans that we got, what the guy who's sitting there holding it needs to understand is that the new investor coming in can't take advantage of that 5% rate. He's looking at 9%. And that changes, but the rents won't support to go up to change the difference of the interest rate. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And you remember when the Federal Reserve, when things first started heating up and the interest rates were coming up and inflation was starting to get out of hand, they called it transitory inflation. And I was a little upset with that word because I knew it wasn't transitory. I mean, you can't shut down our energy production in this country and say inflation is going to be transitory. How much is plastics? Everything's made out of oil.
Yeah.
And so when you see those things, hard times are ahead. our government debt is a concern. What's going to happen in the next 5? I think it's going to get a little harder. I think there will be hopefully just a mild recession, then we'll work our way out of that and through 24. But a lot of it depends. And people, I know the next question you're going to ask me, because you asked Tom Welver, is like, oh no, what's interest rates going to do?
Yeah.
And my answer is it's a perfect market. Even with the government going in and trying to do their things, they can't control everything. It's proven. It's a perfect market. That means so is the stock market. 50% say it's going to go up, 50% say it's going to go down. It's a perfect market.
Wow.
But it can't stay inverted forever.
Yeah. I did some stuff with a CD the other day, which I think is interesting. I've never seen this in my lifetime, where I walked in and they wanted to give me more money. Your bank wanted to give me more money for a shorter time than they did for a longer period of time.
Deposits really weren't worth as much to bank for a long time. Back in the day, we were having CD specials and people were doing, giving free accounts, have a gift. Deposits are worth something now. And, you were asking, are banks in Salina lending money? Yeah, we are, but we still need those deposits. And banks aren't setting on a lot of liquidity, but so that even makes those deposits more valuable.
So where did all the cash go, do you think?
When rates start getting high, a lot of banks put it out into 5, 10, 20 year. Well, now what they're paying on the 1 year is higher than their investment. So some banks. So
and that's how we got into the bank failures, though, right?
Yes, because the tide went out and you found out who was not wearing a swimsuit, and a few banks weren't wearing swimsuits.
Yeah. So they took all of their cash and put it out on long-term investments.
Yep. They put too much. They put too much in one bucket, and that's the beauty of being diversified.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I encourage customers, investors. In our bank, we are a very diversified bank. We don't have all of our. We love agriculture. We love small business. We're really good at residential real estate lending. We like blue collar. I'm blue collar. I grew up. We like people that want to go to work. And then we have the investments in wealth management through Advantage Trust Company. So we do sell to Freddie Mac our long-term fixed rate home loans, and that portfolio has grown tremendously over the last 10 years. And so we just have that diversification. So when maybe one area of our bank is a little bit down in a year, other area will come up. And then we also, we love the region. Salina's the main bank, but we're also in. Since 2014, we bought a lot of the Bank of America locations in Kansas, and now we're in Hutchinson. We got additional deposits in Salina with the Bank of America here, McPherson, Lindsborg. So we've had some really good growth, and we're very thankful for that.
Yeah. Ellsworth,
yeah.
Don't forget about that. Yeah.
Kurt's going to kill me. Kurt's our senior lending officer, and that market rocks and rolls. Great ag community, some good business over there too. Yeah. That's a little oasis in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's been good for you. I'm trying to think of any other exciting things of the city, or where you think Salina should head, or what you hope that would. If you future pace 10 years from now, what would you hope that Salina would look like in 10 years?
Keep me on that, but I'm going to share something. My wife went to the farmer's market last night, and she was heading back to the car, and there was a couple heading to the car beside her. She didn't know them, and she heard the husband say to the wife, or the gal say to the guy that, "Man, I'm glad we moved from California." She goes, "I just feel so much safer here."
Yeah.
And you heard talking with Tim Rogers with the innovation studios and stuff that's coming to K-State Salina. There's going to be more people moving this direction. We need workers. We can't find enough workers. We need housing, and you need to fix that, by the way. So we need workers. We need housing. Salina has a great opportunity. We are an oasis. Look back at 2014.
Yeah.
I got on the bus trip and went to Denver and said, what are they doing with their river? And we've been planning ever since. Before 2020 was just getting started, and they had what do they call it, the charades, where we would sit downtown and argue about what needs to be done for downtown. And Chuck Carroll and I was on the same team, thankfully, because there was talk about putting a 6-foot brick planter all the way for 4 blocks down Santa Fe where you can't do a J turn. And it's like, oh, let's don't do that. And Chuck fought hard for that. So thank you, Chuck. Anyway, long-term Salina, I think we have to take care of what we got. I think we got to finish that river project. I took the hike behind the Y last night, and I'm encouraged. What's happening there, but it's like, come on, where's the Corps of Engineers?
Yeah.
Where's all this money they promised? That I'm excited about that, but as far as big projects in the community, we've done a lot. I think we need to take a breath and take care of what we got. I walk in the parks a lot. My wife likes to pick up trash. That's what she does, and I've seen it's better lately. There's not as much trash this summer for whatever reason, but I think we can do a better job with the mowing and the weed control and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So,
two things I see is we've got to get the homeless under.
it's a problem.
I've never seen more homeless around Salina in all my years, and it really isn't bad compared to Tent City in California. So when we see more than 10 gathered in one spot, we think we're being invaded.
But it's trending, so
Yeah.
those people need help, and we've got to figure it out.
Yeah, and I think the walkers are helping out with that. They've got some
my.
stuff in the works, I think, to help subsidize some of that to make that work. So I think they're working kind of on that end. And however, I don't want to just blame it all. I'm not blaming it, but put it all on them. It has to be a community effort.
Definitely.
From the city manager to the commissioners to the private industry of everybody of saying, okay, how do we give them enough to something to happen? But you can't be the town that rolls out the red carpet, because I heard a funny story the other day saying, hey, Hayes is buying their people bus tickets and saying, hey, now I don't know if that's true. Don't call me Hayes. I'm just saying.
I've heard
could
that
be
for a
anyone.
while.
Okay,
I've heard some
when you
other
get a bunch
cities
of them,
too.
it's like, well, let's give them a $60 bus ticket and send them down to Salina because they've got a phenomenal facility to take care of you, and then we end up with everything here. So we can give them a little bit, not too much. I know everybody needs help. I'm not sure how you do it because my understanding is, who I've talked to people, is saying, what is loitering? How long can somebody be there before that's considered loitering or just hanging out? Like you and I sitting on a bench for 2 hours. I mean, I don't imagine the police get called well, maybe they would if you and I were seen on a bench together. Somebody'd probably call in the police. But, two other people then who are truly homeless sit on a bench for longer than 2 hours. The police get notified, and I'm sure they can't do much about it.
We just need to figure it out as a community. I mean, we have the capacity to do that if we focus on it. If we focus on it. And that focus on it, you talk to Tim Rogers, what is Salina, how are we doing this? Well, when you have the respect between the city, the county, the airport authority, the EDO, Salina downtown, and all the other entities, the police force, there is a trust that didn't used to happen back in the day.
Yeah.
A lot of those people are meeting regularly and sharing information and being transparent. That's what excites me, and that's why I'm very high on Salina long term.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who want to be Salina right now. I hear it.
Yeah.
Walk downtown on a Saturday night. Marcy and I take laps down here on weekends. I take laps at noon, and it's a lot of fun to see. You'll bump into people, and if you get to talking to them, what are you doing in Salina? And you find out that we come here once a month, and we stay at the hotel. We just love what's happening here.
Yeah.
We come here, twice on weekends. There's a lot of people that are paying attention to what's happening in Salina.
So the river project, you mentioned that. Here's my crazy idea for that, and then we'll end on this.
Okay.
I can't figure out. So the end goal is to get the water moving. That's what I've heard.
Right.
Okay. So I've attended many of them. The channel used to run through Salina, then it flooded like in the 50s. You and I weren't around, but we've seen photos of it. And then the Corps came through and they cut from maybe Crawford Street. I'm totally thinking they cut that river to go around to bypass Salina. What I don't understand is if we truly just want it to move and it to be like a beautification and have all that done, here's my great idea. Why can't we, behind Oakdale, put a tube and just put like a centrifuge in and just run water like a big lazy river? And then have an overspill, because people say, well, you got to collect the water and then send it back to the river. Well, you could have an overfill where it would go on there. But my thought was, how could you make it look beautiful and control that water that goes through there? And rather than trying to go up and because from behind the community theater all the way out to where they dredged it, and there's nothing really there. Now, I guess you could canoe that, which is what they're trying to do, is put rafts on there or canoe it. But what I don't want to do is set up something where we get all of this funding from the federal government, plus private, plus city. In 10 years or 20 years down the road, we've strapped our children and our grandchildren with trying to maintain this something that we got all the money given to us. Does
And
that make sense?
I think they're working on that. I think there's some really smart people, the Corps of Engineers. We need to just get them, COVID, that was the excuse, COVID slowed them down because they had to work on whatever, or they couldn't go wherever. When they made that cut back in the 50s, they didn't do it right, and that's part of the reason they're back at the table saying, yeah, we helped cause that problem. So I think they will come fix it. But you're right, you need water blowing through there once in a while to keep that silt out of there.
Yeah.
But you got to get the silt out of there first. It's not a healthy river. It can be a healthy river again if done right, but it's going to take time, money, and focus. So
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a great resource, and a lot of people there's going to be some pretty cool things between here and downtown because of that.
Yeah.
We already got a lot of cool things.
Yeah.
I could go. You and I could both go on about that.
Good. Yeah.
I'm really proud of what's happening in Salina.
Well, I love it too. It's my community. I know it's your community as well. I want to say thank you for everything you did to set the foundation of everything that's kind of here, meaning the groups that you were on. For you to say you were on these boards for 10 years and 6 years, that's a lot of commitment. Most people get on a board and they barely last a year, and you've committed yourself to see a lot of that through. I think city commission could be your next calling. I may put a little thing there that says vote for city commissioner.
Don't go there. I really appreciate the guys and gals that do that, because what a commitment. But you have to be built that way. And
mayor, I can see you, mayor. I can see you with the gavel of mayor.
I do want to say, what's helped me is I always look for somebody to mentor me, and then always be mentoring somebody else. And so I'm meeting with a group. But one of the things I'm meeting with a group of guys, every Friday morning, and it is just refreshing, the things that we share. And then we're peeling off and doing some one-on-one once a week, where we're pouring into each other, and it's just making a difference in my life. And I'm looking for somebody to mentor right now, and there's a young man I've been talking to. So I just encourage people, that's a great way to give back, is just build a team, build a circle of influence around yourself. And I read something recently where you're either the leader or the follower. And if you're the follower, be careful who you're spending time with.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Be careful, because you don't know what their goal is or what their mindset is from there. I also love the one that comes back, a little quote that I've always thought about is, you may think you're a leader, but you have to look back from time to time. And if you only see one set of footprints, you think you're a leader. You've just been on a long walk by yourself.
Wow. Well, you're not a leader in everything you can be.
Right.
And if your mind is built that way, it's gonna be a sad ending.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Kent, from the Community Leader Podcast, this is our time today. Again, thank you for everything you've done in the community. Thank you to First Bank Kansas for the way they step up in our community.
Appreciate that.
And man, you're just a leader. You
we
really
got
are.
A great community, and I love it. And also, thanks to Mo.
Oh, thank the Mogas. Oh, and I have to give you your...
Oh, look at this.
Your shirt. We almost forgot about this. We give these after the interview is over, but we had these shirts made up, and we'll show that there to the visiting, the listeners there, Community Leader Podcast. And the only way you can get this is to come on here.
You are a master marketer. Have ever somebody ever told you that?
Hey, here's my funny thing is, and my friends know this, like, I'll create a logo for anything. You know what I mean? Like, that's how all my businesses started. I may have like 10 or 12 different things going on right now, but they all start out with a logo. And what's the end look like, and how do we get that done? And so we came up with this Community Leader logo, and I really want you to wear this shirt around the community with honor, because it does mean a lot. It means that we thought enough of what you're doing. We noticed, and I wanted to share with what you're doing with the community. And so please wear this shirt with, I don't want to see you mowing your yard in this shirt, okay?
I got it.
I want to drive down the house and see you mowing. This is a little badge of honor you can wear.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate what you do for the community and the leadership that you show, because, there's a lot more in the future we can do, and I'm just excited to be a small part of it.
Kent, thank you for being on Community Leader Podcast.
Thank you.
Yep.